Well, hello again from the Granite State. My name is Gary, and this is the Restoring Main Street podcast. Thank you, as always, for joining me. Let me kill that music just to get that out of the background. So, hey, hope you're all doing well here on a snowy night in January. As usual, I got some information I want to share with you. Thank you for tuning in and checking in. Trying to encourage you each time that we come on here that you would spread the word of the information, the things we're trying to share here. Restoring Main Street podcast, you can find that on GabTV. You can find it on, and I'm going to have a brain cramp here, Rumble, excuse me. You can find me on Rumble. You can find me on BitCHUTE. I do post to YouTube as well. Like I said, just waiting for one of those days when I say the wrong thing and begin going down the path of 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out. But for right now, I'm still there. So what do I want to share tonight? Well, this podcast is going to be what I call an alert, New Hampshire alert. Let me see if do I have anything that even remotely, no, not really. Looking at my soundboard here, I have a lot of sound effects that are attributed to this particular soundboard. It's a nice piece of equipment, but nothing really that I can use to, no siren or anything like that to signal an alert. So what am I talking about? What do I want to share? Well, a couple of podcasts ago, actually the last couple of podcasts, I've made reference to this. But now is a time of action. We have a very unique opportunity coming up this Friday at the New Hampshire State House. So this particular podcast is more focused on residents of the Granite State, but I want other people to take notice of this as well because I guarantee there's something going on in your state when it comes to this as well. And what am I talking about? Well, it's the Article 5 Convention of States. This is a movement that's been going on for a while. I've talked about it briefly in the last podcast, the podcast before that. It was basically a whole podcast devoted to that. So what I want to do is just take a couple of your minutes, share some information with you, encourage you to check this out, and we'll move on from there. So why don't we start the program? And there you go, still using that rather dramatic intro. I hope you can appreciate that. So what is it that's going on? What's the big alert for people here in the Granite State? Well, come this Friday at the State House at 1 p.m., there's going to be a gathering, a committee hearing. And what this committee hearing is going to address, and the public is going to be allowed to actually speak and make their voice heard when it comes to this, is the proposed, what they call application for the state of New Hampshire to, basically we're lobbying the state of New Hampshire, the legislative body, to vote yes to the application for calling a Article 5 Convention of States. So this is a unique opportunity. It comes up, they have committee hearings for other things where the public is allowed to go and speak. But this one, has ramifications not only for this state, but basically at the federal level. It's what I've been talking about and kind of encouraging you to take a look at, to go to conventionofstates.com and take a look at what this is all about. Like I tried to explain in the last two videos, the Article 5 Convention of States is it's a way for us, the people. It's a way that our forefathers gave us an opportunity to actually add amendments to the Constitution. They gave us a framework. So if we, the people, which is what our government is supposed to represent us. They are representatives, whether they're at the federal level or at the state level, but they're supposed to represent us and the things that we'd like to see, the things that we want, the direction that, per se, this country, based on what the people are saying, the direction we want to move in. But more and more what you see in the federal government is they have their own agenda. They tend to ignore what it is that, that we, the people, really want. So what is a peaceful way of going about, evoking some change other than, your vote and, maybe getting out there and, speaking at, a town council meeting or showing up at your school board meetings to speak about some of those things locally that you're concerned about and want to share your opinions. This, through the Article 5 in our Constitution, allows us to call a convention. You need 38 states, basically, to vote yes to call an Article 5 Convention of States. And all that does is it activates, at that point, each state in the Union producing representatives to send to that convention. You go to that convention with a specific mission. You're sent with directions from the state as far as what you're supposed to be working on, what you're supposed to come up with. Right now, they've kept it rather simple. I have a Convention of States business card here from one of the local reps here in the state of New Hampshire. And just to give you an idea, what possible suggestions, and that's all this is getting together and producing suggestions for additions to the Constitution. We're not looking to replace anything, remove anything, change anything. It's suggested additions to the Constitution that further restrict the overreach of government. So here's, three basic ones on the back of this card that we've discussed. I go to the monthly meeting for the New Hampshire Convention of States, and we have discussions about these things, trying to become as informed as we possibly can, and then sharing it with the public. But here's three proposed amendments that could be talked about at the convention. Impose fiscal restraints on the federal government. Now, they keep these things broad because who knows, how many amendments or what could possibly be discussed at a convention. So that's why that statement or suggestion sounds broad at this point. Limit the powers of jurisdictions of the federal government. So there's another proposed idea or broad topic that could be discussed. And then term limits on Congress and federal officials. So, those are just some ideas. One of the other ones that's been discussed, and I think it unfortunately becomes more and more relevant every time each year passes, and that is, a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution that would, force our federal government to get back to a line-item budget instead of these omnibus bills that you just get a blank huge check, and then you figure out what you're doing with the money. Well, if we went back to having an actual budget and a balanced budget amendment, it would force you to go line by line items and actually vote on these things. And then you would have actually some say again. Right now, as it has been lately, the last few years, several years now, we don't get that anymore in D.C. So it's time for a change. It's time to think about trying to do something about that. So an Article 5 Convention of States would allow you to do this. You'd send delegates with specific task. Each state, deciding what that is. The possible amendments would be hammered out at the convention itself. And if for some reason a delegate that was sent by a state started to get off track and go in their own direction, you have the ability to actually recall that delegate from your state and replace them with somebody else. So there are safeguards, and after you hammer out however many amendments you'd like to propose to add to the Constitution, and you hammer out all the verbiage and everybody's comfortable with that, it goes back to the states for ratification. And all it takes is 14 states on any one of those particular suggested amendments to the Constitution. 14 states say no to any one of those amendments, and the amendment doesn't carry. It's done at that point. So there are plenty of safeguards built into this, but this puts the power back in the hands of the people. So that's why this Friday at the New Hampshire State House, this is so important. Let me grab this and share this with you. I will put this link in the show notes afterwards so that you can go straight to this. This is Convention of States website, and this is directed specifically to the state of New Hampshire, calling for this Friday, the 27th. They are meeting at 1 p.m. at Concord. Let's see. It's called basically they're calling it a committee hearing, and this is at the State Federal Relations and Veterans Affairs Committee hearing. The bill proposed, which is basically, like I said, the application to get the state to vote on calling an Article 5. The bill itself is HCR 1. And as you can see, as I'm panning up through here, you can see that there is a place for you to RSVP on here. And if you would consider RSVPing ahead of time so that the organizers here for New Hampshire Convention of States have an idea of how many people are showing up. And you don't have to speak. As a matter of fact, most of what will probably go on will not be, each and every one of you actually speaking, but a show of bodies. Honestly, a show of bodies at anything like this lets the legislative body, especially at this particular hearing, lets them know the level of interest in the state to actually bring this to the floor, House and Senate, and get a vote on this, get a yes vote, so that we can add ourselves to the list of states that have decided they want to call a convention and get us that much closer to the 38 states you need in order to be able to do that. Right now, as far as I know, there's 19 states that have signed on. It would be fantastic, amazing, make my day, as I'm sure it would many people across the country, if New Hampshire would be number 20 on that list of states to sign on to the convention. So, that's all I really wanted to share tonight. I don't want to take a lot of your time. All I want to do is create a sense of urgency, because we don't have time to sit back anymore. We can't wait for these things. Just your everyday life, I'm sure, reinforces the fact that we don't have the ability to just sit back and wait anymore. Are your bills, is the cost of living for you, is any of that going down? Do you see any hope that that's coming? Don't you think that we should somehow attempt to rein in the federal government as far as its just insatiable desire to spend and spend and spend and spend? Excuse me. We don't have endless sums of money. $31 trillion in debt. Washington spends like we have endless sums of money. We just came up against the debt ceiling again, so that debate is raging on to either extend, increase. If certain members of D.C. had their way, they would remove the debt ceiling so they could just have a carte blanche to do whatever they want to. And they claim we have a paying for problem, not a debt problem. No, when you continue to do this with no regard for what the cost is to the American taxpayer, it's not a paying for problem. It's an out of control government problem. And that's what getting back to, a balanced budget, creating a budget, creating an amendment to the Constitution that forces them to balance the budget each year. Those are the type of things that an Article 5 Convention of States could accomplish. So that's what I wanted to share with you. I'm not going to hammer you over the head with anything else. That's pretty much it. I will put the link to the Convention of States website. I'll put a link to that particular page that I just showed you, so that if you'd like to attend, please hit the RSVP and let them know that you're coming. We would like to see a large group of people show up there to say, you know what, it's time that we take back part of the government, that we put some restraints on just the out of control spending, and the idea that somehow these people in Washington that we're their subjects and they're not our servants, when in fact it's the other way around. By the people, for the people, of the people. They're supposed to be public servants to us, but they, quite a few of them, have elevated themselves as far as stature goes, and they're not listening to you anymore. Why don't we do something that would create a way that they would have to listen, that they would have no choice? Give me a second, and I'll be right back. And that was my just a few second ad for my poetry book, The North Country Chronicles, Poetry and Prose from the Granite State. If you would go to either Barnes & Noble or Amazon and plug in that full title, you could get a book of poetry from yours truly. That would help me greatly. Just trying to find ways to eventually evolve this into something that's more than once a week, and that I could share as much information with you on a regular basis, and just get better at this, grow the following. That's why I encourage you each week to share this podcast with a friend, get people involved, comment, make suggestions, all of those things I'm interested in hearing. And like I said, you can do that, whether it's on GabTV or Rumble. Like I said, BitCHUTE is another place that I post to, or YouTube. But like I said, I think for most of us that would like to try and speak our minds, YouTube is one of those places where days are numbered there. So I would prefer you go to Rumble or GabTV to actually view my content. As always, I'd like to, share some shout outs with people that support me. And Coffee News Rochester is one of those particular places on Facebook where you can go locally to find out what's going on in Rochester and the Rochester area. My friend Gene Vallee shares all and every information, anything possible that's going on. So if you want to stay in touch with what's going on in Rochester, please go to Coffee News Rochester. Shoot Gene a little message. Let him know that, hey, Gary from Restoring Main Street sent you. And one of the other places I like to talk about a little bit is my friends at Metalheads. They have a place on Lafayette Road in Portsmouth, but you can also find them at metalheadsrock.com. And if you're interested in rock bands, Judas Priest, now I'm drawing a blank, but anything rock and roll, your favorite rock and roll band, Pink Floyd, whatever, you can find T-shirts, sweatshirts, koozies, mugs, all kinds of things of that nature, along with, like I said, they get into the horror genre, so they have stuff, of Freddy Krueger and Jason and some of those individuals. You can find all of that stuff there, and they have a wide and varied selection. So, go check them out online, metalheadsrock.com, or go visit their store on Lafayette Road in Portsmouth. Tell them that your friend Gary from Restoring Main Street sent you there as well. And like I said, pretty much just a quick focused podcast, and I just wanted to share that information with you because, like I said, it's a very unique opportunity that's coming up Friday, and I would like to see as many of you there as possible. I will be there. Come and look for me. Come up and introduce yourself. We'll reach out, shake hands. Get to know each other a little bit better. Again, you can find this podcast on GabTV, on Rumble, on BitCHUTE, on YouTube. I'm also have accounts on the socials, so you will find me on MeWe, GabGetter, Instagram, Parler, and Truth Social as well. Honestly, that's it. That's all I wanted to share. But like I said, create some urgency because this is one of those opportunities that you don't want to miss. So please, show up this Friday, 1 o'clock at the State House for that committee hearing, and make your voice heard. It's time. Don't wait. And as I like to each week, just as a basis to keep us grounded and just aware of what's important in life, I like to leave you with the idea of God, freedom, and family. Because if we lose sight of God, if we don't pay attention to what's going on around us and secure our freedoms, and part of what's happening Friday certainly represents doing something to secure our freedoms, then our families are truly doomed. So once again, thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. And until next time, God bless.